Hello. Hey, Olaf here and Chris Kendzierski. We're at the Air Advisor Memorial, and Chris and I were a pretty big part of that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we were.
Big time.
Yeah.
So Chris and I first met back in 2011
Yes.
when I first moved here, and I was to be the Air Advisor Academy Commandant. When I got here, this building was empty, except for there's like a couple offices downstairs. And I was given the charge to buy the furniture, hire the staff, create the Air Advisor Academy. And that was quite a task. I didn't even know how to get in the front door when I first got here. And I had one sergeant with me, and that was it. And then one of my first priorities, which I've explained earlier, was to build this memorial that we're here. Right before I took command of it, a couple months before, April 27th, 2011, in fact a week after I had just left Afghanistan, the shooting happened, an insider shooting, and 9 of my colleagues were killed. And I'll talk greater detail, or I've talked more about that. So I had no plans, I had no money, I had no location, I didn't even have my academy yet, and I showed up, and I was trying to think of a way to build a memorial. And one of the first persons I went to go visit after I had a rudimentary plan, I did a PowerPoint, was it?
That's correct.
With my vision of I wanted to have a big A and a little a for Air Advisor, and you'll see that kind of come together. And then I had other ideas inspired by the Vietnam War Memorial. I was inspired by looking at memorials when I drove across the country from Spokane to here, looking for a place of solitude, of peace, and I had this vision, and the vision was not very easy for me to communicate what it was until I met Chris. And Chris, could you tell a little bit about where you were at the time?
Yeah, so I was at a manager at a landscape company, and at that point, Colonel Holm had asked me to be involved, and how were we going to pull all this together and pull the vision. So we created a master plan, and along with the master plan, it needed to have grading because of course all this had to be submitted through the proper channels to be approved and that sort of thing. So as a licensed landscape architect, I was instrumental in helping to do that part of it, and then again, trying to get all of the renderings done and accomplished and all of that at that time.
So I had this is what I want to do, and he had the way to do it, because I didn't have any money, I didn't have any plans, I didn't have anything. I just had an idea. I didn't even have a plot of land. And so I needed to get a professional involved, and that was Chris.
Yep.
So he took it, we went and met. I just made an appointment. I looked you up in the phone book.
That's right.
And came out and
well,
visited.
you had seen a water feature that we had built over at the Expedition.
That's
Center.
it. The water feature. You did that, and then the guys from EP Henry had told me about you.
Right. That's how we kind of came to connect.
Made an appointment. You didn't know anything about anything, and then we talked about it, and then this idea that I had became a vision that he had, and he put it to paper, and he became our general contractor, pro bono.
Pretty much.
So we couldn't pay him anything, but he became my contractor. So I had that and my landscape engineer, and did all the technical work, and took this is what I want to do to this is what we did.
Yeah.
Literally, we're walking down memory lane here, literally, and there's the Air Advisor Memorial. These bricks here were all donated by the company EP Henry, and literally my 2 sons helped lay these bricks along with folks from EP Henry and other volunteers to get ready. This was Chris's vision right here. I had originally thought of just this area up here where the memorial is. He came up with this concept of a walkway which leads you right to it, and it's almost like a runway if you look at it. It's a lot of different things you could think of, but oh my gosh, it turned out so beautiful. I tell you, when I first saw your rendering of it,
right?
I was just floored by how beautiful. You remember how excited I was?
100%.
Oh
100%,
my goodness!
Because we went from a point of pretty much every question that we would ask was coming down to a no. Do we have a plot of land? No. Do we have any money? No. Do we have? But then somehow miraculously things started turning into a lot of yeses.
That's when I got promoted to colonel. I was a lieutenant colonel. Once I made colonel, things kind of happened a little bit. Yeah,
they did change quite a bit.
Because I first talked to you in the summer of 2011.
Yes.
And then, no kidding, 9 months later, all this was completed.
Yeah.
It really is amazing.
It truly is.
We tried to get it on the anniversary of April 27th, but remember how muddy it was in the winter and whatnot, and so.
Which turned out actually in some ways to be a big blessing. And again, simply another little piece to all of this is that my late father at the time was going through cancer treatments.
Yep.
And he had spoken to Colonel Holm a few times because my dad had sort of this little way of being a New Jerseyan, you know, of knowing a guy that knows a guy to get something accomplished. And so my dad was instrumental in getting a lot of these, making phone calls to get bluestone donated and the block that needed to be for the walls and a lot of that. And Colonel Holm was nice enough to have communication with my father at that time. And he actually had an opportunity to assist in all of this, which otherwise, if we had pushed it and it would have been earlier, it may have turned out, you know, somewhat different.
And he passed away.
He did. So
right?
The memorial was dedicated the day after we laid my father to rest.
Yeah. So this was a tremendously emotional project for the both of us.
100%.
You know, we lost my friends, 9 of them gunned down on April 27th, 2011, a week after I left Afghanistan. And then your father was going through, you know, his last days when you were dedicating all this free time to build this.
Pretty much.
And,
pretty much.
So,
and then Colonel Holm was nice enough during the original dedication and spent a few minutes, which to me right now seems to still be like an eternity. But he spent a few minutes speaking about my father, and the way he introduced him was one last great American that needs to be mentioned, and that's sort of commemorated on the disc that was created.
Yeah.
And then Colonel Holm told me about the brick that he had put in for my father.
Where's
right
that?
In front of the water feature.
Okay.
With all of the different engraving bricks.
Yeah.
And
there he is.
And he was nice enough to put this one in for my father, right in front of our water feature that we built. So a lot of great memories and a lot of great things that, you know, came out of all of this through an unfortunate tragedy. You know, and you wish that you don't have to build these types of things, but the opportunity existed, and somehow we got this done.
The idea for me was to build a wall with the names, and I wanted an element of privacy.
Agreed.
So the water feature that was over at the Expeditionary Center was the inspiration for this feature. But everything, you took my vision, and this is the middle part of the bigger A. When you look at it from the sky, you can actually see it on satellite pictures. And then here's the other A right here so you got Air Advisor, okay? Yep. And it's simple, but my whole thought was for family members to be able to come back here and have a place of peace and quiet, and if you just listen to nothing but the water.
Agreed.
And then you have an element of privacy. You can come up here and do what you want to do, salute, cry, talk, whatnot, but you're in your own little world here. And then Chris took it to another level by putting these stones here for somebody to sit down. And I remember right after the memorial was over, which was a terrible and wonderful ceremony, I remember watching, because my office was just right above here, I saw a lady sitting here and just having her moment of quiet. But the other thing I really liked was your little bridge to the wall, so you could actually not just be, it's welcoming. You can walk right up and you can touch the water with this little stone bridge.
Right.
And and I saw so many people do that. Children of the fallen did that. Yep. And
to be able to come up and interact with it is very, very pleasing.
Oh my goodness!
Always presents an opportunity for contemplation, reflection, assignation, whatever. Yeah. And that's what these places really should be dedicated towards.
And yeah, they just recently added 2 more names. Yeah. The Air Advisor Memorial was originally going to be for the NADCA 9, and those were the advisors that I worked with over in Afghanistan that were gunned down on April 27th, 2011. And that's Lieutenant Colonel Frank Bryant, Major Phil Ambard, Major David Brodeur, Major Charles Ransom, Master Sergeant Tara Brown, Lieutenant Colonel United States Army, retired, one of my very best friends, James McLaughlin. He was the very first person to greet me when I got to Afghanistan in 2009.
Oh my gosh. Major
Jeffrey Osborne, Major Raymond Estelle, Captain Nate Nylander. He stayed and fought against the shooter and was his gun jammed and he was killed and was awarded the Silver Star. And I went to that ceremony. And I, you know, when I look at these guys, I'm just so thankful that we were able to recognize their sacrifice, B, when the air advisor, see the academy's right there, when the students come through, I wanted them to understand the dangers that were involved with doing this mission.
You said that throughout the entire build of this.
So it was twofold: recognize and honor the families and the fallen, and then secondly, make this a memorial for those folks that are going to be going downrange and understand the dangers involved. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Gregory Cruz, he was killed in a helicopter crash. Phyllis Pelkey was also killed, I think, on that crash as well. But then we've added some new names, Captain David Leon, and I am sorry, I don't know his circumstances, Major Mark Todd. Now that was way back in '96 in El Salvador, so they've added other air advisors.
Yes, they have.
And Major William Downs, who is another air advisor. And I'm so thankful because we were talking about that, making this for all Air Force advisors,
100%.
Air advisors, and I think we're moving in that direction.
Yes.
But you know, when I first came to you back in 2011, that summer, I remember going to all the different offices, the civil engineering office, and do you have plans? No. Do you have a place? No. Do you have any money? No. And back to that New Jersey attitude. It's
That's
like,
right.
I can't help you, but I know a guy.
That's right. That's
and that was E.P. Henry. E.P. Henry is the one that donated most of the material here, that company. And then they also got me in touch with you.
Yeah.
So
and then you reached out to the Williamson Trade School at that time.
Because again, the guys at E.P. Henry went to that school. So Williams Trade School down in Philadelphia is a phenomenal school. It's a 2-year trade school. You get an associate's degree. It looks like a college, Ivy League school.
It really does.
Phenomenal school.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went to them and they provided the labor to build the outside of the wall. And then
yep, they poured footings.
And that was the Carpenters Union that came in and they did the footings.
They did the footings. Yep.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, the Carpenters Union
work for the footings and everything.
Yep. And a little bit of work from the civil engineering. They did
correct.
some quote-unquote training when they dug the trench that happened to line up perfectly with the memorial. So that was the first thing. I remember when that hole was dug.
That's right.
All along, you've got plans in place, those professional blueprints. You are the general contractor that I go to that I didn't pay you, and you set up everything else.
It's you know, and here we are. So what is this now? 12 years later?
12 years later.
Yeah, 12 years later.
And when we started, less than 9 months later, I had zero money when we started, and 9 months later we had this. Not a penny owed. We were in the black.
In the black. That's right.
And my wife ran the money
helped
for
to
that.
Set up the foundation for. Then there was a board created from president to treasurer, vice president, just like any other entity would be. And it still exists to today.
And trust me, I had legal with me at every step of the way. When I was talking to Chris, I went to legal.
That's right.
I was so nervous of getting in trouble. And my wife, Jonna, she was the chief finance officer for the whole year, really, and she did wonderful.
In current time, I'd like to give a little shout out to I'm going to get his title wrong. I want to say Master Sergeant Robert Neifert, because he has now pulled this together to a point where he makes sure that the maintenance is done properly. He organized a rededication this past April that would have rivaled the original dedication. Spent so much of his own time, just to make sure that this doesn't fall into ruin and, of course, become disheveled.
That was one of the guys that I talked to. I went to part of civil engineering or something, and this young man, he says, well, sir, why are you doing this? It's just going to fall apart in a couple years anyway. And it broke my heart, but I also inspired me. I said, no, it's not.
That's right.
You know, because when I got here, did you know about the shooting before I came to you?
Well, I did, but I want to say from a civilian side.
Okay.
I just remember that, you know, having some friends or whatever that were retired or whatnot, but I didn't know any details whatsoever.
Well, most of the people in the area on base, the leadership didn't realize that those people had all trained right here at Joint Base McGuire, Dix, Lakehurst.
You did tell me.
And the community didn't know that. All these people didn't know that all these folks came here to become air advisors.
Yeah.
They developed the camaraderie when I did the training here in 2009. This is where I became an air advisor and eventually became the Commandant of the Air Advisor Academy. Back then it was just an ad hoc school, classes together, and then when I came back from Afghanistan I was named the Commandant, and we formed a formal school. But this is where these people come together. These people came together and unified and learned their new trade, and then went down range and paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Agreed.
Right here, roots in New Jersey.
That's right.
And that's why it was so important that the Advisor Memorial was built right here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sit back here and I got all misty-eyed when I pulled up, and I'm doing better now, but the emotions, the work, the sleepless nights worrying, am I going to be able to pull this off? Are we going to be able to pull this off? And then you see this and how beautiful it is today, 12 years later.
Agreed.
And
I did the same thing, sitting and thinking to myself, how can I have a part in this, and not realizing that there's so many pieces and legacies that now are left here, you know, literally, no pun intended, but carved in stone.
Yes.
And it's such a wonderful thing to have been a part of. And I feel like it's a privilege simply as a civilian and a contractor to still have access to the base and to be able to come here, make sure that things are still functioning and operational as they should be, because everything needs that attention.
Yeah.
And this will fall very
Oh,
quickly.
it's growing. So I can't believe how big the trees are.
Yeah.
These were just little. When I mean, did we put them in by hand? When,
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. They were all seemingly big at the time, but now, you know, have developed into tucking this in and making you feel more connected with nature also, for whatever time you feel like you want to spend here.
Well, I'm just so thankful.
And the Bloodgood maple, that was one of my father's favorite trees, if not favorite tree, which is really nice to see. It's still doing very well here.
Well, Christopher, I think that's all we can talk about. We could talk for hours.
Oh, we could talk for hours.
But
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. No worries.
Joining me. And
no worries.
Without him, this wouldn't have happened.
Without each other, right?
Yeah, it was a good team.
Yeah.
All right.
Here.
Thank you, guys.